Hi everyone, welcome to another Candace's Corner. My name is Candace Cunningham. I am a person with lived experience in cerebral palsy and intellectual disabilities. I started participating in self-advocacy work in 2006 with the University of Missouri Kansas City Institute for Human Development, where I work now. I'm so happy to work here. I am a research aide. I work on outreach and self-advocacy projects, and I am the host of Candace's Corner. Candace's Corner is information interview where I get to interview guests around the state of Missouri on important topics around disability communities. This season, I am interviewing guests to talk about the history of the system with DD in Missouri. And today I am honored to be interviewing Wayne Crawford. Hi Wayne, how are you?
Hello, Candace. It's very nice to see you today.
You too. So Wayne Crawford is the executive director of Missouri Inclusive Housing. He is an advocate of disability rights and affordable housing. You work at the Missouri Division of DD and you help support for moving from the institution to community living. Is that correct?
Sure, that's very correct.
Awesome. So I'm glad to be interviewing you today, Wayne. Could you, even though I just said it, could you tell us a little about yourself and what you have done with them moving people out of institution?
Oh my goodness. Uh, as an old person, I have a life history in this issue. Um, Currently, we at Mo Housing, we're a not-for-profit agency, so everything we do is a free service. We're supported by the Division of Developmental Disabilities, as well as the Department of Health and Senior Services under the Money Follows a Person program. We function in many different roles. We work in the waiver programs under the DD, uh, and I'll start using initials, but I'm old and you're gonna have to bear with me. But we work in the waiver program, which I'm very familiar with, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later. We work with home modifications in the waiver. We have an excellent team of people that work on that with the division. We work on affordable housing issues around the state and dealing with the lack of affordable housing, and we can talk about that later. And we do consultation with cities and agencies on daily. And I happen to be a member of the Governor's Council on Disabilities, appointed by the governor about 3 years ago, and uh, we also are dealing a great deal with the Master Plan on Aging and Disabilities, which was put into place by the governor. So we do a little bit of everything. And uh, how did I get here? I worked for the Division of Developmental Disabilities for 33 years, I think it was. During that time, I worked in a lot of different roles, but probably the one we're talking about today that got us here is I was superintendent at the Marshall Rehabilitation Center. Now, the Marshall Rehabilitation Center, for our audience, was the largest rehabilitation center in the state of Missouri. We had approximately 1,200 ladies and gentlemen that lived there, staff of over 2,500. We were the second largest city in Saline County at the time, and it was during that time that we started looking at more carefully the issues of people living in the community. Myself and a fellow superintendent named Bob Thompson, wonderful man, started asking ourselves the question of why. Why should people be living in institutions now? Um, I'll be honest with you. You could take the easy road and just do your job every day. And institutionalization would have it could go on forever. We still have them in our state in some form, but we decided to take on that challenge. And to say it was an easy task would be an understatement of a lifetime. But the end result in it in Marshall is that of those 1,200 people in 2015, everyone was gone and everyone lived in the community. So 1,200 people went from institutional life to live in the communities. Now that was because of the Money Follows the Person program that was put out by the federal government, and a gentleman named Keith Schaefer, who was a director during my time, used to say to me, "I don't know how you didn't get fired, but we did things that I'm sure today would probably create all kind of problems. But we use funds, we use people to get people into the community, and it obviously worked. We didn't know if it would. Uh, it was a tough journey, but as I've said throughout my lifetime, you can follow the rules or you can do the right thing. And we did it, we achieved it. And about the time that the HAP Center was down to about 250 people living there, I retired. And soon after that, it closed itself totally. So that's kind of where my story began. Uh, Now, why am I doing Mo housing? I was approached by the DD Council, Missouri Developmental Disability Council, and they have put out a grant to look at what is the housing needs in the state of Missouri. What's going on? And I had been out of that field for a while. I had retired, and to be honest with you, the retirement's a pretty good thing. Kay Conklin is a lady that some of you may know, was part of that group that uh, applied for and got that grant to look at the issues. And they called me and said, Wayne, you're the guy that's probably the has the most knowledge about affordable housing in the DD community. And we want you to come out of retirement and see if we can find answers. Well, I said no several times, but obviously I'm talking to you today. So I said yes. The reason for it is I remember very well she was on a call and she said, you know, you want to give it one more shot. And so this is why I'm here today.
And I'm glad that you came back out of retirement because I I I can't remember when I met you, but I know every time we talk, I learn something new about history and your work, so I'm glad you did. So what was your experience of closing the half sitting from the family perspective or the individual's perspective?
It's an interesting journey. Uh, the Marshall Habilitation Center, for what it was at that time, wasn't a bad place to live. This isn't Christmas in purgatory. It was a good place to live, but it was a choice of where to live. You were placed there. And when I became superintendent, uh, I went through the records of all 1,200 people, and it kind of brought everything to focus for me. Uh, there was a lady there that I got to become very good friends with. Maggie O'Leary was her name. And when I looked at her record, she was probably in her 70s, and she had lived at the habilitation center since she was literally 3 or 4 years old. And the other thing I found out was she was not developmentally disabled. She had been an orphan and she was forgotten. And that started a problem in my soul. And at that time, I called the director and said, "Boss, we've got a little problem." And he said, "What was that?" He said, "Well, I just want you to know that we've kidnapped a citizen of the state of Missouri and are holding them hostage in the Marshall Habilitation Center." And I told him the story. And about 3 days later, I got a call from the Attorney General's office saying that, well, she couldn't be there, and that our obligation to her was to give her the necessary clothing, money, and the front gate. And to you don't know me that well, but I said, well, that ain't gonna happen. And that led to quite an interesting battle to end the story for you. When we went to Maggie and I said, Maggie, you don't have to live here. My gosh, you don't have to live here. She lives in a group home on campus with 6 other elderly ladies who were just wonderful people. And I told her that if she wanted to, we had this program. She could live in the community, money follows a person, even though she did not qualify for anything because she was not disabled. But I'd figure out some way to pay for it. And she said, "Oh no, Wayne, I can't leave." I said, "Why?" She said, "I have to take care of my girls." Now think about this. Those were her roommates. She was also a national champion tatting. She did tatting. Now some of you people that are older are going to go, "Oh, I know about that." But all that being said, there were arguments. There was, I think, there were threats of my demise. But the bottom line on it is that she got to live the rest of her life at an rehabilitation center as someone that was not eligible for DD services.
I have a follow up question. So, and you might not know the answer or can say, but how many of those people who lived in the rehabilitation center were like Maggie? Did you, were there a lot or was this a special case?
There wasn't, out of the 1,200 people that lived there, she was the only one who fell into that strange group. So I'm going to tell you, it was extremely rare. And of course, after we got into the more current age of support for people, that was filtered out through the qualification processes. Uh, but on Maggie's death, uh, I was told that she needed to go to the anatomical board for autopsy or for study by people, and we all said we can't do that. I mean, she was a person of dignity, and the bottom line on it is, we had a funeral, didn't ask anybody, and if you drive by the old rehabilitation center grounds on a beautiful hill, is a cemetery where she was buried and we built. Now that was against more rules and regulations than you can shake a stick at. And I actually got a call saying you can't do that. And my comment was, "You want me to dig her up?" And I figured that was a day I would lose my job, but I did make it to retirement. So enough about those stories. But the parents were a real issue. You can't just tell people we're going to move your loved ones somewhere else. And so we had to go into that softly and have conversations. And here's why: those families, those people um, had put their loved ones there because they were told that was the best place for them. And all of a sudden, people like us were saying, I think they could live in the community and have a better life. And that puts burden on a family of what did we do wrong? How did we make a mistake? And so we worked on that for a long time, and we moved people slowly. And eventually, once families and others got to see what it was like for these people to live in the community, the ball got rolling. My biggest challenge was public administrators, because they didn't want their wards to move out of an institution because they, in all due respect, didn't have to think about it. And but there was a lot of bloodletting. There was a lot of angst, uh, and that's how we got there. I will say to you, in closing on that question, about the time that we were really pushing the movement out of the institutions hard. Bernie Sanders, a gentleman that I now call a friend, but became the director of the division. You don't need to know about that whole story, but the point of it is that he and I could have some serious conversations, but he had our backs. He took the heat for a lot of a lot of that growth, and I really respect him for that. So uh, he would probably be embarrassed that I even bring this up, but he he probably helped us through some pretty stiff political times.
I interviewed him the first episode. So yes, he's an awesome, you know, and this is why we're here today.
Well, if you send this to him, tell him I'm sorry for embarrassing him in front of the crowd, but he made a difference in the lives of a lot of people by allowing us the freedom to go out and do these wild things that we did.
Yeah, he set down the framework, yes. And I'm glad he did. How did Missouri inclusive housing start?
Well, as I said earlier, we started on really a dream by the Missouri DD Council. Uh, they wanted to see what was happening in the field. Why was this housing issue starting? We couldn't find housing. Now it's a disaster. Uh, Affordable housing for ladies and gentlemen with special needs. Well, it's not just developmental disabilities. It's all issues. It's seniors. It's people like me. So the first year they gave out this grant, it was just me. So I literally traveled the state and met with everybody. Now I had a lot of contacts in the state, but I started learning what is going on, and I was stunned. I didn't know it had gotten that bad, and so we started addressing it. We don't need any more data. We're information rich. We're actually poor. And so that's where we started saying we've got to do something, not just know it, but change it. And that's when we started pushing harder. The Division of Developmental Disabilities about that time uh, noticed our work and what we were doing and asked if we would come on board with them, which really opened our doors financially to do more things. We are a cheap organization to run. We're not in it to get rich. We're in it to make a difference. And there's a team of four of us that do this work. And from that, the Department of Health and Human Services, which was really pushing the Money Follows the Person program at that time, um, asked if we would work with them, and so we do that now in the Money Follows the Person program, and it keeps us very busy.
I bet, I bet. How can a person, so I'm going to say myself, I I work, I have a full-time job and still we receive some Medicaid, you know. How could I or someone, you know, who is looking for an affordable, accessible house thing get involved with? Oh, where should I start?
You know, we now get calls every day with the same question. We've become, for some reason, the go-to agency. It, there is no magic pill here. We are. It's getting worse. The affordable housing thing. Our state actually is the affordable housing market is driven by the Missouri Housing Development Commission, which is in charge of what we call low income housing tax credit development. That's the big developer in our state for affordable housing, and they will put out about $250 million a year to develop affordable housing. Uh, the problem is that for every state in our nation, and Missouri is one of them, for every 45 affordable housing rental units that get built, We have 100 people waiting. And so we need more. We need a, the private rental community is just not there for us now. They don't, the rental market has exploded. Rents are unbelievably high. Um, so people with a limited income can't find a place to live. Or, I said I had no social filters. If they rent something, it's usually junk. And so we have to stop this. But it's a constant voice that has to be said. Um, we're out talking about it as you know, because you heard me. We're out talking about it everywhere we go. I'm working with cities now, uh, many of them now that are trying to restructure so that affordable housing can be available for our citizens, and that's a broad spectrum of people. And we are starting to make some changes. But if you want to find a place to live tomorrow that is affordable on a limited income, it is nearly impossible. It is just impossible, and the state has to deal with this. The Master Plan on Aging, which is an unbelievably powerful document that people need to be made aware of. It was an executive order by the previous governor. Is working very hard on restructuring government to start dealing with this issue because it's getting it's just growing in leaps and bounds. A lady named Mindy Ulstead is the lady with DHSS that's in charge of this entire effort, and I mean she is it's amazing what that lady is doing as far as bringing the state to a state together to work on it. Uh, I've been asked and have been participating as the director of the housing initiative within the master plan, but we've got to turn the page. It won't help you and I tomorrow, but now the other thing we need to be aware of is these low income housing tax credit programs all over the state. These places have been built are wonderful and they are affordable, but they have end dates on them. And about 10% of all LIHTC properties leave the affordability program after 30 years. And so we track every affordable rental unit in the state of Missouri, actually nationally, because we do work in some other states. But, and we know where they are in their lifespan. And we're trying to help people to understand that um, you may have lived there for 25 years and been successful, but you may get your property sold out from under you. And we are working with everybody to change the way that business is done. No one's at fault here. It's the system the way it's built. But the problem is we're taking people that have developed a very successful life within affordable housing and have brought themselves out of bad issues. And all of a sudden, we put them back on the streets with nowhere to go. So, as you can tell, that's one of my strong advocating areas.
So, do the people who move into those housing know that? I believe you said 35 years. I forgot how many years.
30.
30 years. Do they know that it won't be under the LIHTC program anymore?
I'm just going to say it very clearly. No, they don't. And a lot of times, well, and most times, the people that support them don't know this because everybody's so desperate to find housing now. Uh, That's why we work so hard to notify the public on folks. We have to understand this, and we we need to start developing a system where, as properties are going out of the system, we're building behind it new property to support people. We also need to make sure that people are following the rules and notifying people who are going to lose their homes years in advance, so that we can find something. But we had a situation in Springfield, and we won't go into it now because you don't have the time. But it turned into a disaster, and people that lived there a lifetime were basically put on the streets, and the city had to get involved with it, and HUD got involved with it. My point to it is, we know it's the problem. I can tell you where it is, so why don't we fix it?
Yeah, thank you. How did you personally get into the housing work?
Oh, well, it started with when we were moving people out of the habilitation centers. At that time, the Money Files a Person program was just getting going, and we were using those funds. But you know, not in my backyard is something that's still alive and well within our society, where people are scared about people moving in that they don't know and they think are different, it's et cetera, et cetera. So we had to move slowly to make the story almost funny. The very first home that we were able to put together in Marshall was for three senior ladies who were just had been at the Rehabilitation Center for many, many, many years and didn't need to live in an institution. And we were looking for a house. And on the street where I grew up as a boy, a home that my grandparents had once lived in came open, and we rented it for. And and we knew then you couldn't just move in, so we had a picnic, and we brought the neighbors, and people met each other, and it gave people a chance to come together, and that was our success story. And to be very honest with you, we had to make sure those first homes were not failures, so that people would understand that. Uh, as a sidebar to that, I was asked to be one of the first FEMA teams to go into Joplin when the tornado hit, and one of the areas that was rebuilt was built on that model of a neighborhood of people with affordability of all different types that created a blended community. That became a very important thing. And now with the Light Tech program, if I'm working with any Light Tech developer, it's got to be a blended community of people of all types living there, because I'm not going to be part of anything that creates a segregatory neighborhood. So that's how it got started. You just learn as you go. Um, I got to be honest with you. When we started Mo Housing, we didn't know what we were doing, and we get up every day and push the button a little bit farther and speak on it more. Um, it's not a job; it's an adventure. And those of us that do it because it's the right thing to do. There are some days I wonder, but get up every day because, in all due respect, it's the people you support that make you keep going.
Yeah, for sure. We we don't go into this field because we know there's 100 million bucks. We know we are helping and supporting people to live better lives. So yes,
And I have, we can't talk about it now because you don't have the time, but there are stories. There are stories of successes from people who were just lost souls that are now living in the community, not because of us, but because of putting together people. I mean, our field is loaded with caring, good people who want to do the right thing, who need to have doors open. The provider system in our state now, for people, I work with them a lot through Starling, and these are not people that are trying to get rich. They're people just trying to help. And if we don't work with them, then we fail them, and in turn, they fail the people they support. Uh, it's very seldom do I find any service agency within our system, either here without the United or throughout the United States, that is in it for the money. They're they're in it for all the right reasons. So we can't complain about people not caring. We just have to give them the tools so they can do what their job is.
Yes,
Yeah.
and when you say that, it's kind of like a saying that I've heard. It takes a village to kill for somebody. So this, when you said that, I was like, this is all village, and we're coming for other, you know. So yes,
That's very well said. Thank you.
thank you. What what happens when people move into their communities?
Oh, well, it's always going to take two or three different tracks. It can take a track of being a failure if they don't get the right supports. They don't build the right system around them. I think it's rare now, but we do find people that are supported, uh, but still live in very bad situations because they can't find any place for them to live, which then gets into issues of neglect, abuse, et cetera, et cetera. Even in the best circumstances, our state has had people living in supported living that have been very tragic stories. But that is a microcosm of the success. So when people move in, we have to make sure that it's not becoming a little institution. It is a place that allows them to leave there, to be part of society, to get them involved. The house has to be something that's a good place to live, that doesn't uh, stereotype them in any way, shape, or form. That's the goal of everybody I meet. Now we got to make it happen, but there's no question that everyone that I knew that left the habilitation center had a better life, and many of them had success stories that are jaw dropping, and they would make a great book. So no, you it's never. Oh, I got to be careful here. It's never better to institutionalize a person. It's always better to give them a chance to be part of a community structure. But I know that's hard. And sometimes people are challenging and we don't know how to support them. Well, that's our failure. But, and in all due respect, we don't fund these programs the way that we should at a state or national level to meet the needs of the people. So people are trying to put things together without the funds necessary to make it happen. Um, but it's always better. It's better to be at home.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Can you share some accomplishments that you're most proud of?
Oh my. Um, Obviously, being part of the Division of Developmental Disabilities, if it go out on the limb and say we're going to close these rehabilitation centers, I mean that took a lot because I mean nobody wants to say this, but the rehabilitation centers, were basically money makers for government. If you work in government, in my opinion, you want to do a really good job, you have to expect to get fired eventually because you're going to challenge the status quo. But it that probably would be my greatest moment. The thing I'm most proud of now is that um, I'm around people that really try. I'm 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 around people that want to do the right thing. I'm proud of the fact that we're now able to champion this housing issue. And you know what? If the Division of Developmental Disabilities and the DHSS and the DD Council had not uh, allowed us to open those doors, it would never happen. I'm proud of where we are. I'm sad of where
Mm,
we need to go.
yeah, I like that. Yeah, thank you very much for talking with me today, Wayne, about housing and where we need to go and where we've been. Um, thank you.
Oh, it's always my pleasure. And I probably be the weakest speaker that you get on on your podcast, but I appreciate you giving us that time. We need to always challenge ourselves to move forward. You have a good day, Candace.
You too. Have a good day.